She used my scars for a college award. My revenge cost her everything. The morning light filtered through my bedroom window, casting shadows across the two deep scars that ran along the left side of my face. I traced them absently with my fingertips, a habit I'd developed over the past 3 years since the cycling accident that had changed everything. The doctors had said I was lucky to be alive after careening down that mountain trail and landing face first on jagged rocks. Lucky. That word had become a bitter joke in my life. At 17, I'd grown accustomed to the stares, the whispers, the way people's eyes would dart away when I caught them looking. High school had been a special kind of hell from the moment I'd returned after the accident. The popular kids had nicknames for me. Scarface was the most creative they could manage, though Freak and Monster made regular appearances in hallway conversations that suddenly stopped when I walked by. But I'd learned to armor myself with indifference. I kept my head down, maintained straight A's, and counted the days until graduation would free me from this suburban prison. That was my plan anyway, until Rebecca Chen walked into my AP literature class in January. Beck, as everyone called her, was everything I wasn't. President of the student council, captain of the debate team, volunteer coordinator at the local animal shelter, and possessor of the kind of effortless beauty that made people stop mid-sentence when she entered a room. Her long black hair caught the light like silk, and her smile could make even our sorest teachers soften. She was headed to an Ivy League school. Everyone knew it, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never had a door close in her face. I should have known better than to develop feelings for her. But when she'd been assigned as my partner for our semester-long poetry project, something shifted. She didn't flinch when she looked at me. She laughed at my dry observations about Sylvia Plath. She even started sitting next to me in class, choosing me over the empty seats near her usual crowd. "You're actually really funny, Marcus," she'd said one afternoon, her brown eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. I don't know why more people don't see it. Those words had replayed in my mind for weeks. My mother noticed the change immediately. "You're humming," she observed one evening as I helped with dinner. "I haven't heard you hum in years." My younger sister Emma, ever the romantic at 14, had squealed when I finally admitted I had a crush. "You have to ask her out. Valentine's Day is coming up." "Look at me, Em," I'd said, gesturing to my face. "Girls like Beck don't date guys who look like villains from horror movies." "Stop that," my father had said firmly from his spot at the kitchen table. "Those scars tell a story of survival. The right person will see past them to who you really are." Their encouragement had worn down my defenses. I spent 2 weeks crafting the perfect plan. I discovered through careful observation and casual conversation that Beck loved dark chocolate truffles from a specific chocolatier in the city an hour away. I learned her favorite song and spent countless hours teaching myself to play it on guitar, despite my mediocre musical abilities. I even wrote her an original poem, pouring my heart onto paper in carefully crafted verses about seeing beauty in unexpected moments. The day I planned to ask her was a Thursday, February 10th. I still remember how my hands shook as I waited by her locker after school, the box of truffles hidden in my backpack, the poem folded in my pocket. "Marcus!" She'd seemed genuinely pleased to see me. "Perfect timing. I wanted to ask you about our presentation next week." "Actually," I'd managed, my voice only cracking slightly, "I wanted to ask you something." The hallway had been mostly empty, just a few stragglers heading to after-school activities. I pulled out the box of chocolates first, watching her eyes widen in recognition. "Are those from Amelie's? How did you even know?" "You mentioned it once," I said, then rushed forward before I lost my nerve. "Beck, would you go out with me? For Valentine's Day?" The silence that followed felt eternal. I watched emotions flicker across her face. Surprise, something I couldn't identify. And then, impossibly, a smile. "You know what? Yes, I'd love to." I'd barely made it to my car before the tears started. Happy tears, the kind I hadn't cried since before the accident. My family had celebrated like I'd won the lottery. Emma immediately started planning my outfit, while my parents made reservations at Chez Laurent, the fanciest restaurant in town. Valentine's Day arrived like a dream. I'd gotten a haircut, worn my father's cologne, and practiced conversation topics in the mirror. When I picked Beck up, she looked stunning in a red dress that made her skin glow. Her parents had been polite but distant, her father's eyes lingering on my scars with barely concealed discomfort. But the evening itself was magical. Beck laughed at my stories, shared her own, and we discovered a mutual love of obscure sci-fi novels. When I walked her to her door, she'd hugged me, actually hugged me, and said, "This was really nice, Marcus. Thank you." The next week at school was transformative. Beck's friends, who had previously looked through me like I was furniture, suddenly acknowledged my existence. Jake Martinez, the basketball team captain, actually fist-bumped me in the hallway. Sarah Kim invited me to sit with their group at lunch. For the first time since the accident, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I started to believe that maybe my father had been right. Maybe the right person really could see past the surface. Beck continued to be warm and friendly, walking with me between classes, partnering with me in labs, even inviting me to study sessions with her friend group. "You seem different," my English teacher, Mrs. Peterson, had commented. "More confident. It's nice to see." I was different. I walked taller, smiled more, even started raising my hand in class discussions. The scars were still there, but they'd stopped defining me, or so I thought. It was February 24th, a Friday, when everything shattered. I was in the library during lunch, working on calculus homework, when my phone buzzed. The message was from Ashley Park, one of Beck's closest friends. We'd barely exchanged 10 words before Beck and I started dating, so seeing her name on my screen was odd. "You need to see this," was all her message said, followed by a series of screenshots. My blood turned to ice as I read Beck's Instagram posts, the ones from her close friends story that I hadn't been added to. The first was a selfie of us from Valentine's Day with the caption, "Fulfilled his lifelong wish by being his Valentine, and our kindness matters or make a difference." The second was worse, making his day by finally helping him interact with my friends, building his confidence one day at a time. "He is ugly, but beautiful people accept ugly people. We all need to do our part. Chamero ugly people matter. Just chuckin' community service. Yarunar role model." But it was the group chat screenshots that destroyed me completely. Beck: "Guys, I need you all to be extra nice to Marcus for the next few weeks. It's for the Davidson Award." Jake: "The what?" Beck: "The Positive Role Model Award for the college application. Mrs. Chen nominated me, but I need to show consistent charitable actions. Dating Marcus and helping him feel accepted is perfect." Sarah: "That's kind of cruel, Beck." Beck: "How is it cruel? I'm literally making his dreams come true. You saw how happy he was on Valentine's Day. I'm doing him a favor. Plus, he's actually kind of smart, so he's useful for the AP Lit project." Jake: "How long do you have to keep this up?" Beck: "Just until March 1st when they make the decision. Then I can let him down easy. Say we're better as friends or whatever." Ashley: "This feels wrong." Beck: "Oh, please, Ashley, I'm giving an ugly, scarred kid the best weeks of his life. If anything, I should get 2 awards for this. It's not like he'd ever have a chance with someone like me otherwise. I'm being charitable." There were more messages, discussing strategies for making me feel included, reminders to be nice to me in public. Even a point system Beck had created for tracking her kind acts toward me. Each word was a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I sat in that library, surrounded by the quiet rustle of pages and whispered conversations, feeling my world collapse. The happiness of the past 2 weeks curdled into humiliation. Every smile, every laugh, every moment I treasured had been a performance. I was not a person to Beck. I was a charity case, a stepping stone to her college ambitions. The worst part was how calculated it all was. She'd researched my interests, found my vulnerabilities, and exploited them with surgical precision. The girl I'd written poetry for had turned me into her community service project. I left school early, telling the nurse I felt sick. It wasn't a lie. I spent the weekend in my room, ignoring Beck's texts, asking if I was okay, why I'd missed our study session. My family knew something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them. How do you explain that your first relationship was just someone's elaborate college application strategy? By Monday, my sadness had crystallized into rage. but it was a cold, focused rage. If Beck wanted to play games with college applications, I could play too. I researched the Davidson Award extensively. It was a prestigious recognition given to one senior who demonstrated exceptional positive influence on their community. The winner received a $5,000 scholarship and, more importantly, a letter of recommendation from the school board that carried significant weight with college admissions. The nomination period had closed in early February, and the decision would be announced March 1st. I also discovered something interesting in the fine print. Nominations could be revoked if there was evidence of actions that contradicted the spirit of the award. I spent Monday evening crafting my email to Mrs. Chen, the faculty sponsor for the award. I included the screenshots Ashley had sent, along with my own analysis of how Beck's actions represented a fundamental violation of the award's values. I wrote about the psychological manipulation, the coordinated deception, and the cruel irony of using someone's insecurities against them in the name of positive role modeling. A true role model, I concluded, doesn't build themselves up by treating others as props in their personal narrative. They don't mistake exploitation for kindness or cruelty for charity. I hit send at 11:47 p.m. Tuesday morning arrived with drama. Beck was crying in the hallway, surrounded by her friends. Word spread quickly. Her Davidson Award nomination had been revoked. Mrs. Chen had informed her before first period, apparently showing her the evidence of her conduct unbecoming of a role model. Sarah Kim approached me at lunch. "That was you, wasn't it? You're the one who got her nomination pulled." I met her gaze steadily. She played games with my feelings for a college award. I just made sure the committee knew what kind of role model they were considering. "You destroyed her chances at Yale," Sarah said accusingly. "No," I corrected. "She destroyed them herself when she decided to use me as a charity project. I just made sure there were consequences." The backlash was swift and severe. Beck's friend group closed ranks, and the story spread through school in various mutations. Some painted me as vindictive and cruel, unable to handle rejection. Others, particularly those who'd been on the receiving end of Beck's subtle cruelties over the years, quietly expressed support. Ashley found me after school that day. "I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you. I should have said something sooner." "Why did you?" I asked. She shifted uncomfortably. "Because what she was doing was disgusting. You're a person, not a prop. And honestly, I was tired of watching her manipulate everyone while maintaining this perfect image. You didn't deserve to be her stepping stone." The next few weeks were lonely. Beck's supporters made sure I felt their displeasure through cold shoulders and whispered insults. But there was something liberating about it too. The fantasy was dead, and with it, the false hope. I knew where I stood now, alone, but with my dignity intact. Beck tried to approach me once, in early March, after the Davidson Award had been given to Michael Torres, who'd started a tutoring program for underprivileged middle schoolers. "Marcus, can we talk?" She'd cornered me by my locker, her eyes red-rimmed. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, not stopping as I gathered my books. "You ruined my life." The words burst out of her, raw and angry. "Yale rejected me. My parents are furious. All because you couldn't handle—" "Handle what?" I turned to face her fully, letting her see the scars she'd found so useful for her charity narrative. "Handle finding out I was your community service project? Handle discovering that every moment I treasured was just you padding your resume?" "I made you happy," she protested. "For 2 weeks you felt like you belonged. Isn't that worth something?" "You made me a fool," I corrected. "You took my first experience of feeling valued and revealed it was all a lie. You want to know what's worth something? Honesty. Treating people like human beings instead of opportunities." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I got rejected from everywhere except state. My whole future is ruined because of you." "No, Beck. Your future changed because of you. You made choices. You decided to use me. You decided to document it on social media. You decided that my feelings were less important than your ambitions. All I did was make sure the truth came out." I walked away then, leaving her crying by my locker. Some of the students watching looked at me with disgust, others with something like respect. I didn't care about either. The remaining months of senior year passed in relative isolation. I ate lunch in the library, kept to myself in classes, and counted down the days to graduation. Beck's friends made sure to remind me of my outsider status whenever possible, but their efforts felt hollow. They lost their power to hurt me. Prom came and went without my attendance. Graduation was a relief, not a celebration. When Beck gave her salutatorian speech about learning from our mistakes and growing through adversity, I almost laughed at the irony. She carefully avoided eye contact with me the entire time. College was my fresh start. At State University, ironically the same school Beck ended up attending, I found my people. The film club didn't care about my scars. They cared about my script ideas. My roommate, Trevor, said the scars made me look badass, like an action hero. I even started dating a girl from my psychology class who traced my scars with gentle fingers and called them beautiful because they were part of my story. I saw Beck occasionally on campus. She joined a sorority, thrown herself into student government, still maintaining that polished exterior. We never spoke, but once, during junior year, we ended up in the same coffee shop. She was alone, studying, and looked up as I entered. Our eyes met across the crowded space. For a moment, something passed between us. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but maybe acknowledgement. We'd both learned something from our brief, toxic entanglement. She'd learned that people weren't props in her success story. I'd learned that I deserved better than someone's pity disguised as affection. I ordered my coffee and left without speaking to her. Some bridges once burned are better left as ash. Looking back now, 5 years later, I don't regret reporting her for the award. She'd asked her friends to tolerate me, had called me ugly in writing, had planned to discard me once I'd served my purpose. The fact that she cried when faced with consequences doesn't erase the calculated cruelty of her actions. But I also learned something valuable from the experience. The scars on my face had always made me feel like I had to be grateful for any attention, any affection, even if it came with conditions or expiration dates. Beck taught me, inadvertently, that I deserved more. I deserved someone who saw me as a person, not a project. Someone who valued me for more than what I could do for their image or their applications. The scars are still there, of course. They faded some with time and treatment, but they'll always be part of me. The difference is that I no longer see them as something that makes me less deserving of genuine connection. They're not a weakness to be exploited or a charity case to be publicized. They're just part of my story, like Beck is part of my story, a painful chapter that taught me my own worth. Sometimes I wonder what Beck learned from it all. Did she ever realize the genuine harm she'd caused? Did she understand that kindness performed for recognition isn't kindness at all? Or did she simply learn to be more careful, to keep her manipulations off social media? I'll never know, and honestly, I don't need to. Her growth or lack thereof isn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to myself, to refuse to be anyone's stepping stone, to demand better than performed affection, to know that my worth wasn't determined by my scars or by someone else's willingness to tolerate me. The Davidson Award that year went to someone who genuinely deserved it, someone whose kindness wasn't a performance, but a practice. Beck ended up at State instead of Yale, her carefully constructed image cracked by the truth of her actions. And me? I ended up exactly where I needed to be, no longer hiding from the world, no longer grateful for scraps of attention, no longer willing to be anyone's charity case. The scars on my face tell a story of survival from a cycling accident, but the invisible scars from Beck's betrayal? Those tell a story of learning to value myself, of refusing to accept conditional kindness, of understanding that being alone is better than being someone's good deed. Some people might say I was wrong to expose her, that I should have quietly walked away and let her have her award. But those people probably never had their deepest insecurities weaponized against them in the name of charity. They never had to discover that what felt like acceptance was actually exploitation, documented and hashtagged for maximum impact. Beck played a game with my feelings, turning my vulnerability into her virtue signaling. She thought my scars made me an easy target, someone who would be so grateful for her attention that I'd never question its motives. She was wrong. I may have scars on my